Okay, everyone, welcome to the Mind Body Energy Project. Hey, Tiffany.
Hi-yo.
It's so cool to be back doing a live event since it's
I
been so
know.
long.
It feels like it's been really long and I've missed it.
Yeah, it's been, I think, at least a month. But we just want to let you guys know if you do end up seeing us in your feed for a moment, if for some reason we pop out, it's because Zoom is having a problem connecting to Facebook today. So if that happens, we will post the recording when we're done. But hopefully we'll be here for the duration. So how are you
Did I
feeling
just
today?
overlap tracks?
Yeah, you did.
Damn it.
I know,
I,
technology.
I know. I had to get it
Tiffany and
up so that we could.
technology.
I know it's not a good combination.
Well,
Excuse
before
me.
we get into today's conversation, of course, I have to ask, how was your trip to Hawaii?
It was great. Yeah. Um oh gosh.
You have officiated 2 weddings since last
I
we
have. Yeah.
spoke. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that needs to be like a new gig of mine because I really do enjoy it. The wedding went wonderfully. Hawaii is beautiful. Um, but this is actually kind of a cool thing um, to tie into today's topic. It was an uncool thing that happened. I had a panic attack in Hawaii, which was cool.
Oh,
And hi, Josh, welcome.
he said Reverend Tiffany. Hey, Josh.
Oh, I don't have my rings on, Josh. Damn it. Next time. um, yeah, so I had a panic attack the second night that I was there. And
Wait, don't tell it yet because we have to tell them what we're talking about. And then so
okay,
it'll make sense.
okay.
So
So
tell them what
that's
we're
how
talking about.
Hawaii was. It was wonderful. And also, um, I got a lovely gift while I was there.
The gift of anxiety. So, what
Yeah.
we are talking about today, and then Tiffany can tell us her beautiful story, is that not to let your shifts fool you, because
Shifts,
for
not your shit. That'll
yeah,
fool you too. But
your energy shifts, because when we are doing this work, of course, a lot of shifts occur while we are going through our processes of self-healing and self-discovery and all of these different layers. And a lot of times, because of what we experience, it can be unnerving sometimes, and we'll make decisions or respond in ways that we maybe wouldn't have if we just realized we were going through a shift and letting it
mhm.
just unfold. So anyway, before we get all into that, back to you, Tiff. What happened with your panic attack?
Well, so after the fact, first of all, I didn't know it was a panic attack, which you'd think that after all these years and after all these experiences with it, that I would have known better. But stress and anxiety are very elusive and they're very manipulative with the way they show up and are seen. So even if you do have a good track record, for me, it took calling my mom the next day crying for her to remind me
She's like
that
the invisible guest of the show.
she really is. She really is. And it was funny because, I mean, it wasn't funny, but hindsight is hilarious because I'm an adult, but whatever. Um, as I was picking up the phone to call her the next morning, because I still didn't feel great. Um, uh, I remember thinking that I was like, the voice in my head was like, "You've been doing this since you were a child." And I was like, fuck, I have been. And I remembered a specific trip that I went on with my cousin. It was for her. She had a really cool vacation Bible study that they would go on these really fun trips in the summer. So I was like, yeah, I want to join your church and do your church camps because I got to go on these cool trips. So we went to amusement parks halfway across the country. And I remember like calling my mom because I didn't feel good and I was afraid I was going to have a heart attack on a roller coaster, like just ridiculous. And then when I called my mom and told her, she was like, "It's a panic attack that runs on both sides of the families." And she's like, "You used to do this when you were in Girl Scouts." She's like, "When you were a little brownie, you would go camping and call me." Are you
Oh.
visualizing it? Is that why you're laughing?
No, I'm just thinking you haven't changed much.
I know.
It all
I
makes
know.
sense now. I'm like,
God.
oh, putting the puzzle pieces together. Like, oh, backstory.
Yeah. So, So when it came to light that it was a panic attack, and because when I'm in it, I don't recognize it. And even though like this is the stuff I study and work with people on and advise people, still when you're in it, like you don't recognize it all of the time. And
Right.
a panic attack, for me, it's not like you see in the movies where somebody's hyperventilating and they're breathing into a bag and, like just all this craziness. For me, I go internal and I just shut down. And I was with, one of them was my friend, two of the girls I was staying with, but I didn't really know anybody else. But my one friend who's the bride, like she knows me very well. And she knows that like I deal with this kind of stuff. But the other girls were used to me being like pretty bubbly and joking and happy. And at that dinner that night, I just completely shut down and I couldn't eat anything. My stomach was all crazy. I get this like weird sensation in my head. And then as everybody knows, the like physical empath that I am, my brain starts internalizing and trying to make sense of why my body feels like this.
Mm-hmm.
But making sense of it being a panic attack is never really the sensical way for my mind to do it.
Right. Not the best time.
Yeah, I had a therapist tell me once, she's like, if it sounds like a horse, Tiffany, it's probably a horse, not a zebra.
Well,
I'm like,
listen to you say that though, because you mentioned, even though you help people with this, I mean, they say we are the best at supporting people with what our own challenges. So it
yeah,
makes sense that you help people with this because it's like,
yeah.
you
You
really
teach
get
what
it.
you teach what you need to learn the
Right.
most.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
It's funny you say that because I was thinking about that earlier today too.
yeah, I think it's like absolutely true. Not even sometimes intentionally. We just find ourselves in those roles of
Yeah.
supporting people with what our biggest challenge may be.
Yeah. So
I, huh?
you go ahead.
No, I was going to say, my um, first encounter with panic attacks or that experience was one time in a relationship when I was in my 20s, and I was like getting out of it, but sometimes it's long and drawn out, and it took like a year or so to get completely make that break. And I started experiencing, and it was my first time. So I'm not I don't call my mom that much for like things, but I mean, I call her to say hi, but not
Yeah.
because of what's going on in my life.
Right.
But at that time, I was so afraid because of that was the first time. Like I thought my heart was going to fall out of I didn't know. I thought I
Yeah.
was dying, and I called my mom like, ah. I remember I was driving on the freeway. I was like, Mom, I think I'm dying.
You literally feel like
Yeah.
you're dying.
Yeah. And then I didn't experience it again until after I had gone through my layoff and coming to that place of trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. That was the
Yeah.
second time. Now, um, I just have the experience of like recognizing when there's something energetically uncomfortable in my space, like today, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let the shifts fool you. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what is, well, today I was like something was erupting inside of me today. And it's really weird when you do start to do this work and you become very consciously aware of like your shifts as you're going through them. It's because there's that one part of you that's like, I know what's going on. It's okay. It's going to pass. And then there's the other part of you that wants to like curse out the whole planet, So
Yeah.
yeah, it was one of those days.
So we need to come back to that because I want to talk about the attachment to that.
Mm-hmm.
But prior to getting to that, so with my experience in this last panic attack, it wasn't until hindsight I looked back. And if we're talking about shifts, so the past several months have been insane for me,
Yeah.
with like shifting into some new roles with work, not shifting into them, adding new ones.
Right.
So I'm adding to the bulk of things, working in more of a healing space, letting go of financial clients, getting through tax season. That was a nightmare. A breakup, which it's been a long time since I've like had intense feelings in a relationship and then gone through a breakup. So like that was pretty cool. And then officiating 2 weddings, which I've never done before.
Right.
And I honestly, like, because I was in survival mode, I really thought that I was processing things well. And I do think I was mentally and emotionally. But the second I got to Hawaii, the first day that I had nothing to do, it's like the physical stuff that hadn't fully been processed, or like the self-care I didn't take physically
Mm-hmm.
came to the surface. And it was like, bitch, you forgot something.
Right.
You have to take care of your physical body with all these things. Like you've been working out all the other things. but it's like as soon as we have a moment to stop, the unprocessed stuff will rise up. And
Yeah.
it's
Well,
not,
I think we don't notice how much we distract ourselves. Cause like anyone who
yeah.
doesn't know you, I will let you know, Tiffany has a tight schedule. Like she has a tight schedule.
Oh my God, I'm
And
so sorry.
so, yeah, no, that really makes sense that once you had an opportunity to stop, that all of a sudden, things really came up, even though you had dealt with it to some degree, you
Yeah.
still have a lot of distraction at home with like teaching yoga and like everything else that you do in between on a daily basis. So, no, that
Yeah.
makes total sense.
Yeah. Which
That's
lends itself to wondering like, how long does it take to process the shifts? Like how long do we sit at home to process it, or how do we create that sacred space to give the time to do it while we're juggling all of the things?
I think it depends on how we handle it, because if it is a situation where sometimes you are going through a shift, but you have to stuff it to like,
Yeah.
deal with the rest of your life or do other things, that just like adds fuel to the fire in a lot of ways, and it can elongate it. And then we usually erupt. But for me, for example, like today, I had a very deep meditation this morning, and I've created created like a alternate kind of practice for myself, a daily practice or ritual that I'm doing every morning. And so I had a very deep meditation with the intention of like healing and transforming like whatever I'm ready to deal with at this time. And the meditation itself felt great. Oh, it was so expansive and lovely. And within an hour, I felt everything starting to erupt and like, ooh. So I fortunately was able to give myself, like 30 minutes of just feeling kind of funky
Yeah.
and, kind of like just knowing like, man, oh, I just feel like cranky. And then once it had passed enough, not entirely, I went back into meditation again just to help to smooth it out and ease it out.
Mm.
So that I think helped me because I was able to deal with it real time and not wait.
Mm-hmm.
So stuff is
So
still moving, but I feel much better.
good.
Yeah.
There's a couple of comments from Josh, who also suffers from panic attacks. He said the interesting thing about panic attacks is when you are the most relaxed in happiness. It is a stored stress being released all at once because you are relaxed. Yeah. Yeah, because it's almost like we're not in that survival mode like you were talking about, of
Mm-hmm.
keeping the energy at a place where it's like, I don't have time for you right now. Like you need to stay there. So
Right.
yeah, it's like when our energy is expansive, that stuff wants to move up and out. So then it rears its ugly head. And
I wonder if that is why too. I mean, speaking of it, is why people have such like these identity crises that we've talked about before. But like when they retire or when their kids leave the house, because now what was part of their daily focus has now left, and now there's nothing left to focus on but the self. And
mm,
um, yeah, again, all of a sudden it's like, ooh, oh man, I got some stuff I've been holding on to. And that can
yeah.
be really jarring on top of getting used to a new norm.
Yeah, which again, coming back to one of the foundational pillars of the MBE project is getting to know yourself, so that there will be a time it will show up. The self
Mm-hmm.
wants to be seen and it wants to be understood. So we may as well just pay attention and get through the murky stuff now and keep on getting used to that process, because it will show up and it will demand that attention.
Yeah. And I like the story that you shared with the panic attacks too. I mean, that highlights what a lot of people may experience, physically, but also when we're doing energy work. I want to point this out. It is very common for people to feel more dramatic shifts in the beginning because it's the first time that they're consciously and intentionally moving their energy and working on themselves. However, if you've already started your practice and then you take a break, as a lot of people do, we take a break because now we feel shiny and good and we just go back to life. And then we don't go back to our practice until something in life throws us a wrench.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're like, oh no, I need to meditate because everything's going to hell. If you stay consistent with at least meditating or connecting with yourself every day, it helps to lessen the extreme experience of, you know, the shifts that occur and the up and down. So if you want to be consistent in your practice and you just don't have a good reason why, that is a good reason why. Just,
Yeah.
yeah, it does help you to be more resilient too. But have you, this is the part I wanted to ask you with, you know, these shifts and how they can really trick us when we're still figuring it out. Like, did you go through a period where you felt like you couldn't be around your friends anymore, or like people in your life, you were just like, man, I just can't handle it. I can't deal with
Yeah,
it. Like, were you having attitude problems?
totally. Oh yeah. Yeah. Are you kidding me? I always have attitude problems. Um, specifically, specifically when you get into the deep work, you know, with like going out and having a good time, like just hanging out and drinking and talking about dumb shit. It's like, it's really hard to be around that vibration when you're in this other deeper vibration, right? And it's nobody's fault. It's just a choice of different perspectives that you're working with. And then also like opening up your space to be more energetically sensitive. It was really hard not feeling understood, you know, and even to some degree, not feeling under. My friends asked me how I was, and I told them I had a panic attack, and of course they look at me, who is their like yogi guru of the friend group, and they're like shocked about panic attacks, you know. And I explained to them, and they're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa." So feeling what almost feels like an outcast to some degree, to the degree that you're like misunderstood, you know, or other people aren't doing the work either. And it's like you kind of want a companion in there with you, just knowing that somebody else is doing the work alongside you on themselves and can understand, you know. There's a lot of isolation with that.
Yeah, I felt that I wanted to hermit in a lot of ways when I first started this, and I did. And there are even days now where I just want to hermit away. But what I realized, hindsight, was before doing this work, even though, you know, there were times I felt different or like, you know, just had other interest in things that maybe no one around me did, it was still more comfortable, I guess you could say, to like blend in, right? And then when you start doing this work and your stuff starts coming up and you become more sensitive to energies, you become more aware to the energies that surround you and just all of these different layers of things, it can be really aggravating. It can be really loud. It can be really uncomfortable. And I think for a lot of us, our initial response to that is judgment, because we're just like, what the hell is going on with everybody and everything? And what?
Yeah.
Because you're just all of a sudden like hyper aware. And again, you know, if you're not aware that part of this is just like the shift that's occurring and the healing that's happening, it could be really confusing. And
Yeah.
you know, you might cut off your friends for no good reason, you know, because if you kind of allow yourself to be more patient and just be an observation, you'll come to a space where that judgment and criticism starts to morph into understanding. You start going like, oh, okay, I see. My friends are just on a different path, or they are going through their own, you know, challenges or whatever it may be. You just start to come out of the extreme feeling of it. And then like, it's almost like the lens becomes more clear and balanced again. But and then you may even find at some point it's easier for you to then reintegrate in with the rest of the world without feeling so like uncomfortable about it.
And I think it's interesting that you bring up judgment, because when you say hermiting away, like there's some times where when I don't necessarily want to hermit away, because I fear I'm judging that shift, that I fear it's going to turn into like a bout of depression, you know? So then you get up and you distract yourself and you do something different, and then you're not really ever processing it. So part of what I think can happen with misunderstanding these shifts is that we judge the shift itself.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. And I mean, some people it's interesting because in my process, I didn't have anyone to like go to or talk to or say like, hey, am I going crazy? So it's almost like I had to really like examine what was going on and talk myself off of the ledge and like all of these things. And fortunately, sometime like a couple years in, then my friend Ethel and I became really close, and we were like really like deep support for each other through all of this, and we still are. But when I started working with other people, I would see them go through this, and it is very common that people in this work hit these spaces where, you know, they're just highly emotional, a lot is moving, they're crying, they're like what is happening to me? But, you know, again, it's part of the process, and it kind of weaves in and out of the process, especially again if you're not consistent in your practice and not consistent in working on yourself energetically. It'll seem very extreme. And you know, we often talk about the dark night of the soul as like this one-time event, but I mean, we have several death cycles, and we have a lot of, you know, moments of integration, and then we feel great, and then boom, here comes something.
Yeah.
You know, it's coming up again. Josh said, I've got them under control now, his panic attacks. When I have them now, I can treat them like a headache. That's really good. He said, do you think panic attacks ever have any truth behind them? I always seem to have them when I created a story to a situation that wasn't what was really happening. I mean, that's
a good question.
Interesting. They're true in that they are triggered by what you believe. They're true in that they are triggered by, like, you know, fear or some underlying discomfort, you know. So really it's like
that it's a physiological response of the body
to,
as well.
right.
So a physiological response of emotional and mental.
Right. But what may not be true is the way you're perceiving something, you know, and what may not be true are the stories you're telling that is like heightening that fear or that discomfort. And again, for some people, it's like, you know, it's an event that triggers it like on the spot. But sometimes it's just like what happened with Tiffany. It's not like Hawaii itself triggered a panic attack for her, but there was energy or things or emotions laying dormant, waiting for her to like be quiet so that they could kind of erupt, you know? So yeah, I think I think anxiety and panic attacks are a true indication that there's something else going on with you, either mentally or emotionally, that wants to be addressed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it sparked another thought in me that I forgot where it went.
Down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So did you cut off friends, or did you have challenges when you were going through different like layers or shifts?
I didn't cut off any friends. I maybe took some like timeouts and had to readdress the relationship, the energy around the relationship.
Yeah.
Which was very hard. Very hard. And I mean, you want to talk about when two people are going through shifts in a relationship, and you have to like figure out how that works, and then, you know, meet back up at a different place with different I don't know, like different evolutions of what you went through, and then finding like reestablishing that connection.
You know, when you say that, it reminds me of, and I guess it's a good thing to point out, is everybody goes through shifts. It's not just people who are doing this work of like meditation and energy work and all of these things, because, you know, I mean, everybody does. Change is, you know, constant in all of our lives, and we all are working through things regardless. I think the difference when we're doing this work is that it becomes, it amplifies, because we are so much more aware and become more sensitive to like literally feeling the shifts or having an awareness of what's going on for other people too. And again, that can be very challenging until we figure out how to navigate that without taking it on in like deeply empathic ways. Or I mean, it could be interesting.
Did you have to cut people out?
No, again, I just went into like a hermit mode. But the truth is, I've always kind of been that way throughout my life. So for my
Mm-hmm.
friends, it really wasn't that shocking.
Mm-hmm.
The relationship that I was in at the time when I first started that did end. And it, I think it was, but we're still friends. So it didn't end in a bad way or abruptly. It was more like my attention had focused so much on myself and my self-work and like what I was doing. And in that, there was also like this amplification of our differences and like
Mm-hmm.
how we really were just better friends than partners. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
like that revelation kind of just was like, huh, would you look at that?
Yeah.
So luckily, fortunately, we were able to, dissolve the relationship or transform it into a friendship, and it was all good. But yeah, I mean, I definitely the changes and what I was realizing about myself at that time in my life, I really just wanted to do it alone. But I mean, if at that time, if I were married or something like that, I would have had to have a very serious conversation with whomever I was with to say like, hey, something's changing. So I might just need a minute. I'm not going anywhere. I just need to like be in my own little bubble. Don't take it
Yeah.
personal. Like something's changing and I need to figure it out.
Which is a really great point that you bring up because, and this may tie into Josh's question, which is how do you know a shift is a good shift? Um, uh, the point that you raised about not letting somebody else's shift scare you and trusting that they're going to go through their process of shifting, being the same person at their core, but coming out a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
And then that may also impact a shift in you potentially.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why it threatens our friendships and our relationships a lot of times because people are just used to us being who they perceive us as.
Right.
And when we start to change or like just something about us even just feels different to them, it can make people really uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes they'll personalize it.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably one of the best things for anyone going through any kind of like shift in their life, right? Be open with your friends or whomever you're with to tell them, explain as best as you can what's going on so that there is no reason for them to personalize it. And some
Mm-hmm.
people will be understanding and support you through it and other people won't. But
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing you could do about it.
Yeah. So to answer Josh's question about how do you know a shift is a good shift, from my understanding, I think we, our higher selves, know what we're doing, and if we're shifting, we're doing it for a good purpose. And it may not always feel good, but it always is good because I think subconsciously there is a divine wisdom that knows what it's doing and is purposefully shifting us out of what it is we're in order to grow and expand.
Yeah, no, totally. I was trying to think, I don't know of a bad shift. I mean, I know some shifts are uncomfortable as hell, like
Yeah.
really uncomfortable, but usually on the other side, we can look back hindsight and go like, wow, that really supported me, or thank God
Yeah.
I did go through that because now I'm in a better place or something. But yeah, unless you have an example, I really can't think of a shift that
Yeah.
wasn't good.
But I mean, even if you can put the label of a shift being bad on one, even for that moment in time, if it's whatever it is, if it's something somebody did that was completely dastardly, it's most definitely will have karmic effects that would lead to an inevitable shift on their part. And
Mm-hmm.
some people, it might take a long time for them to get there, but it's the, it's the starting point of that catalyst that's pushing them to the place where the good intention is.
And sometimes, I mean, quite honestly, some of the shifts that we have that are the most uncomfortable are leading us towards what we've been asking for and what we've wanted. It just looks very different than we thought it was going to be. Like
Yeah.
how many times where you're like, oh, I would love to experience blah, blah, blah. And then your life erupts and you're like, what's happening? But then on the other side, you're like, holy crap, I'm where I wanted to be, you know? It
Yeah.
reminds me kind of like the Tower card in tarot. Josh said, I sometimes get this confused. Is an energy shift the same as raising your vibration? I've heard that people being on different vibrations can make you move away from people. No, that's choice. So, okay, that it really is choice, Josh. So, like a lot of people will say, and I think it just, people will say as you lift your vibration, lower vibration people will just start to naturally like fall out of your life. But in a lot of circumstances, it's choice. And it's kind of what I was saying before. A lot of people, as they start working on themselves energetically, their immediate experience is judgment, and that like, ooh, this lower frequency doesn't feel good, so I don't want to be around it anymore. And that's absolute choice. What does start to happen, though, is like as you do, so our energy shift period is a change. And sometimes the changes that we are experiencing are a means of helping us to heal so that we can like lift or strengthen our energy field or lift our vibration, which is to say like even to move deeper into like a higher level of awareness or higher consciousness, but also strengthening your energetic field. As you do that, it's not really that all of a sudden like low vibration people aren't around you, but you start seeing everyone outside of that lens of judgment. That's really the truth. I mean, instead of looking at someone and being like, oh, they're flawed, they're bad, they're this, they're a jerk, you start to look at people and like, oh, wow, I see their hurt, I see their struggle. So like your frame of mind changes more. And a lot of times, again, when people cut people out, it's choice. Yeah. And this part, in terms of sometimes people leaving our lives as we change, it's not so much because they just can't take our high vibration. No, a lot of times it's because they just don't like the fact that we're changing. That's just really the truth. A lot of people are uncomfortable with the fact that you're changing. It makes them uncomfortable and they may not want to be around you, but it's not because like your frequency is so high, like, ooh,
Right.
no. I mean, if anything, like who wouldn't want to be around somebody that feels good? You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So no.
And also not to mention not forgetting that we're mirrors for each other.
Yeah.
So if you start changing, it could be a trigger for somebody else that maybe isn't ready to change or doesn't want to change. And again, that is a choice as well.
The good part of it too is that as you do work on yourself energetically and like your energy strengthens or your frequency lifts, so to speak, the difference is that you're not brought down, you're not as susceptible to coming down to match people's frequency if they're like in a state of fear or ego and these things. Like sometimes, yes, we're triggered and we're still working through it. It's not like you're going to wake up as the Buddha. Like it's a process, right?
If
But
only.
you do have, like, you start to develop more of like an awareness and a resilience and a conscious choice to not come down to match those points of
Yeah.
view.
Yeah.
You know what I
And
mean?
that takes a lot of strengthening. I mean, one,
Heck
to
yeah.
recognize it is one thing, and to be aware of it is one thing, but then to strengthen that muscle, to be aware of when it happens and how to get out of it, that's hard. That takes
Right.
a lot of work.
I mean, if that were the case, like if it were really a thing of like, oh, you know, once you get such a high vibration, then like if it were a repellent to like people in lower frequency, it would be like the parting of the Red Sea when you walk
Yeah.
down the street if you were
Yeah.
working on yourself. Do you know what I'm saying? Or like, how could you go, the Dalai Lama wouldn't be able to fill a room because nobody would like dare to like be near that
Yeah.
frequency, you know, like,
Yeah.
no, it's not, it yeah. I'm laughing, Josh, not at you at all, not at your question at all. Just to be clear, I'm laughing because it's interesting, like how much we, and we all do this, like we hear things and they sound like they make sense on the surface, but a lot of times we don't really think about it in depth. And
Yeah.
so like a lot of us will just go along with like these ideas or phrases without examining like, would this even make sense? So,
Yeah.
and that's not to say I'm right. I'm not saying that either. I'm saying examine it for yourself and really see like what makes sense to you, because
Mm-hmm.
that might make sense to you. And if it does, honey, high five up top. But for me personally, that's not what I believe.
Well, and it's not so one dimensional either, right?
No.
So we have like that frequency that we're working on, but we also have our ego,
That
you
high.
know? So like our spirit
Oh,
self is that which is vibrating on whatever frequency it is. But coupled with that is our ego in this opportunity to have free will and decisions and choice. And most of the time, we're not blending the two of those unless we're very present and conscious and mindful of it.
honey, I'm sitting here just smirking thinking about my daggone ego. Like, man, woo! Honey,
Yeah.
you would never be bored in this lifetime because there is always something to work on, to work through. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
man almighty. We are really, I mean, and again, like it's one of those things that was coming up for me today, just thinking about like this life experience and, you know, what it means to be human and like what we encounter and like just what Josh said a moment ago, like even our stories and all. I mean, God dang, we make things really complex when I don't know that it needs to be, but it's
Yeah.
just the way things have been fashioned.
Yeah. And, it's kind of funny being in this place of like, there was a time where I was so in my ego that like everything set me off. Everything, like, especially like work wise, financial wise, like relationship wise, like things would just set me off because I was
Mhm.
living from a fear mentality in my ego because I didn't understand the separation. And this lovely journey has taken me all the way to this point. And so, like, I've touched the other side. I know
Mhm.
it's there. I've touched the other side. I've lived in that bliss, if not for but just a nano moment.
Yeah.
Um, and then it's somewhere like in between is a really annoying space. Like the ego side's super annoying because it's exhausting.
Yeah.
But this place in between, it's like, because I just had another episode too. I got notice that my rent was going up yesterday,
Mhm.
which spun me out too, and it spun me out the old way.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
like, I'm moving back home with my parents. California's too expensive. I can't get my shit together to like make enough money to make this work. I have to give up. Like I
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
to give up. Um, but then here comes in the higher voice being like, you're being ridiculous. I'm like, shut up. And I hadn't actually fallen back into that fear ego mindset like as acutely as that in a while. And obviously it was coupled with some other things that I'm still working through. But it was just kind of an annoying space because I'm like, I know everything's going to be all right. I know it's going to work out. I know this is an opportunity for me to light a fire under my own ass and get things going.
But that's
Like,
the part I say where it makes us more resilient because your old
yeah,
self would have stayed in that loop of just
yeah,
like crazy noise, you know?
yeah. But it's funny because now I'm in the middle and I hear both of them and I'm like, God damn it.
There's the
But it's
tug of
good.
war.
It's all good. Yeah.
But I just thought to tell Josh, because I don't know if I answered your question and what my mind went off. I derailed. But there are different kinds of shifts, Josh. There are internal and external. And so a lot of the shifts that we experience internally result and manifest into some type of external shift happening in our world. And a lot of all of it can be to help us to move forward in healing and lifting our vibration or working on ourselves or however we want to frame it. So, yeah, I mean, the shift isn't necessarily the same as raising your vibration, the way you said, but it's more of like what may be the catalyst to give you the opportunity to choose how you want to heal and transform.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes, again, like as I'm sure you know, it can be uncomfortable, but on the other side, we find like, oh, hey, I'm still alive.
Mm-hmm.
He said he asked his ego to go away, and it said no.
That's good. That's a good thing,
Yeah, you
Josh.
need it.
You
Don't
need it.
let it fall
It's
off.
your tether here to planet Earth and being a human. You can
Yeah,
go back in the archives. We did an
just train it.
ego. Yeah, train it. Train your dragon.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. Train your
I,
dragon, train your ego.
yeah.
Uh, so
In
one
the
of the,
archives is ego versus higher self somewhere back there.
yeah, it's like
So
way
check
back
that out
there.
if you haven't listened to it in a while.
But take your time. I think that's one of the best things I would say. I mean, the shifts can be like, don't let them fool you in that, they're probably not the best space to make decisions from. Like, you
Yeah.
probably want to make sure that you are grounding and giving yourself space to move through it before making drastic decisions or moves or things, because they can stir up a lot. But also, give yourself time to acclimate when you are doing this work, or even if you're making big decisions in your life. Like, say you do a career move, right? You might not want to also move the next day, or like, you know what I'm saying? Like, when we do things that cause significant shift or change in our life, whether it be choices or energy work, whatever it is, you may want to wait a second to see what that stirs up before you start bringing in other things that are going to also perpetuate this like movement of like energy and mind and emotion in pretty significant ways that also can help ease transitions. Acclamation up top.
I'm going to punt this to you, Yolanda. Are energy shifts always connected to the zodiac? It's an interesting question and thought.
Yeah. No, our energy shifts, a lot of times we are, how do I say this? Like, consciousness can be influenced by, and we can acknowledge like the patterns and like energy shifts that are reflected through like the movement and transit of planets and seasons and all of these different things, lunar phases, all of that. But a lot of shifts are just a direct correlation to your choices, or a direct correlation to, old wounds or beliefs that you're clinging to. Your shifts could be, a result of so many things, but though I would say more what you're asking, it more influences maybe your mind. It may influence more of like how you're feeling, those types of things. But ultimately, like, you still have choice. I would say like this, like even not talking about planetary transits, but just like my chart, right? If I look at my chart, I may have more of an inclination to be more logical than emotional. Now, that may be my tendency, but I still have choice to respond from, or allow myself to respond more emotionally. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the zodiac, no, it does. I think the zodiac is, it's good as a sense of guidance and perhaps understanding of things. But then again, it's always going to come back to your free will and your choice.
Right.
So it's like, okay, I'm a Scorpio. I act this way. I recognize that. I don't have to act that way.
Right.
Is it going to be my natural tendency? Potentially.
Right.
It's been in full effect lately.
Yeah.
But because I'm informed of that, I now can make an informed decision and choice to do it differently.
Yeah, and that's why we even do like the monthly energy updates, Josh, because it's like, this is the potential, like this is the energetic influence that will be going on within this month. But since we know it ahead of time, we can choose how to navigate within that energy, how to use that energy, how we want to. Because think of it this way, right? Like me, you, like we're all sitting in the same energy right now. The planetary alignments may be affecting us individually differently, but we're not all going to have the same experience, and we still are going to make different choices. Jesus. I feel like my brain is like, I hope this makes sense. He said I am making sense.
Yeah.
He said, does yoga ever affect you energetically?
Hell yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you're moving your body. So, I mean, just the pure fact that like stretching out muscles releases toxins, it moves energetic blocks when you can just physically moving your body. The physical blocks, the way I see it is that the physical blocks come from energetic blocks. So if you can move the physical blockades, then the energy is going to unblock or move or shift.
And breath work in yoga.
Yeah. Yep. Breath work, meditation. I mean, it seems very simplistic when you look at it as like holding poses to stretch your body, but get yourself in there and it will be a new experience every single time.
It's a huge mover of energy. Yeah.
Yeah. Because
love it.
a lot of levels: physical, mental, emotional. And as we discussed in one of the archived yoga ones, the actual, what we see as yoga in the Western mind is not just positions we hold to stretch our body. That's one of 8 components of it. And
Yeah, I
2 of
think
those
we
8,
did the whole 8 limbs,
we
right?
did, yeah. And 2 of those 8 limbs have 5 different things in them. So once you dive down that rabbit hole, yes, yoga changes you energetically.
He said, have you ever used yoga to help with your panic attacks or any strong energy shifts? Yeah, that was my personal introduction to
Yeah.
yoga, was Bikram yoga. And it was when I was going through that relationship, I said, where I was when I had my first anxiety attack.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I decided to try yoga. And it was a game changer. I went every day, Sunday through Monday, like didn't miss a day. I went every day because that's how much it helped me to alleviate the stress and anxiety I was feeling.
I moved into yoga from an athletic standpoint. I just wasn't getting enough stretching.
Huh?
To be quite honest, I wasn't getting enough stretching in what I was doing. So I was like, well, I'll do yoga to stretch me. And then I was curious about Buddhism and like all these other ideas. And so yoga kind of started to bring them all together. And then I went down the path of what yoga was. And yeah, a lot of strong energy shifts. It really helped me understand anxiety and how the energy sat in my body. Because at the time too, I was doing a lot of hardcore athletic type of workouts, which were kind of setting my fight or flight system off, which was always being set off regardless. So when I moved into yoga, it was toning down my fight or flight system. And
Yeah.
that made huge energy shifts to help bring things back into balance.
I have to say too, even with that, and like a way to wrap it up because we have to go in a minute, is like if anything with your shifting process, like be a participant in it. Like
Yeah.
know when to allow, know when to sit down and not
Yeah.
do anything. Like don't try
Resistance
to
is futile.
force. Oh Jesus, yeah, don't. That'll just make it more uncomfortable. So,
Yeah.
you know, like all the things we've talked about throughout like all of these episodes can support you in your shifts. I mean, just like 3 main things is, meditation helps a lot, that self-connection, being an observation of yourself and not ignoring what you feel, like really like giving yourself an opportunity to choose how you want to navigate the shift. And sometimes that's taking action, but sometimes it's just sitting still. Like, it doesn't look the same all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that was an intense conversation.
Yeah. And on a day where we're both like shifting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing too, just to let you guys know for the patrons, we did already post the energy for the month. Happy May, by the way. And we are making some changes for the MBE insiders. You will have an opportunity to meet with Tiffany and I once a month, like in a group setting on Zoom. So instead of typing to us, you can actually talk to us. And that should be fun. And we will also be doing weekly readings for our MBE supporters and insiders. That will be available on the patron page. So just head over there for all the details. And we will see you next time.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye. Oh.